Anybody that worked on the engine or had any connection with them whatsoever likened them to something being alive, and the motion and the noise and bathing them and caring for them. It was like a living thing. It's a shame that you people didn't know those times, because it was something.
Take it on low, we'll come out. In fact, we can get water right there because we got the lower hose. I came from Monroe, Washington on the Everett Line branch of the Milwaukee. And when I was a small boy, I used to see these trains coming into Monroe with these funny-looking locomotives. Actually, they were the Malleys with the coffin feed-water heaters, and they looked like they'd been in a head-on collision and had the front end bashed in. And I used to ask people, well, where do those trains come from? Oh, those come from Cedar Falls, was the answer. And so Cedar Falls was always kind of a mystery to me.
Some communities are totally existent because of the railroad itself. I mean, they wouldn't be there. They weren't there until the railroad was built, and the only reason for their existence is the railroad. Probably the most striking example of that would be a helper point. Cedar Falls was one of those locations on the Milwaukee.
My house was 10 feet away from the Everett line, and them old mallets that they'd fire up and start for the hill. There's quite a grade from Tanner to Cedar Falls on the Everett line. And I had 3 children, and the whole house would shake after those big mallets that go by with about 50, 60 logging flats on the back. And at first it bothered them, but later on they slipped right on through.
In 1912, when the Everett line started operating, they had the 3 Geelharts, and my Uncle Herman was the roadmaster.
Well, like Geelhart, he had an office right next to mine, and he was actually the overall official at Cedar Falls. We got along right from the first start, and couldn't have had a better roadmaster working that area. In those days, we were known as the family railroad for the Milwaukee, and this was true. They were good people, real good people, and it was a pleasure to work for them.
I hired out in 1936, around the 4th of July. My father was a brakeman on the Milwaukee Road out here on the West Coast in 1920. And my younger brother, he had a lot of little kids along the track there, and he'd have a lot of candy, and he'd be throwing off candy. They'd be waiting for him. Don, D.T. Freeman. We called him Double Trouble. And then my sons, Bob, he became a telegraph operator. And then my youngest son, Paul, he was a conductor and brakeman on the Milwaukee Road.
The valley was, when it was first settled, was so isolated that the river was the only real transportation avenue. But that had its drawbacks because of the fact that the river in low water, they couldn't get boats up over certain areas of the river. And so you were kind of dependent upon the fluctuation of the river. So when the railroads came in, that provided the first year-round dependable transportation. And they took over everything.
I've had a good life on Cedar Falls. I was known as a guy that anything that went wrong, I was blamed for it. 90% of the time they was right, or 10% of the time they was wrong. But I survived, finally grew up to adulthood. I didn't get killed or shot or anything like that. Spent a lot of time down the lake. Out of the playground, I seemed like I lived out in the woods. Me and my dog, or me and my fishing pole. We fished in Rattlesnake Lake that we weren't supposed to. In fact, I fished there for 10 years before I found out that fish ever bite in the daytime. And nobody knows what fishing's like until they fish the Rattlesnake Lake at that time. The fish had averaged 14 inches long. Yeah, I got a little older. I got, being the old school, I knew how to work. I got a job in the section one summer with old Pasco to Vinyl, got an experience. And I just spent my whole life in the railroad.
The Milwaukee Railroad came through Cedar Falls after the city of Seattle had already established Cedar Falls as a location for their watershed. And to be really honestly truthful, I wasn't there at the time, but some old correspondence that I've seen indicates to me that the city of Seattle did not exactly welcome the Milwaukee Railroad coming through. The city said, well, all right, we'll allow you to operate through here. Milwaukee established some people in town. Obviously, you had to have engineers and conductors and brakemen and section men, a lot of laborers to work on the track. So houses were thrown up and built, but the city of Seattle was pretty fussy.
Well, the city light always said that they was better than we was. We had that feeling. Of course, they had cement sidewalks down here. They had a swimming pool, and as long as you had some good buddy down there, you said, hey, would you invite me in to go swimming today? So I managed to go swimming down there pretty often, but there was just a lot of rivalry between us. They often referred to us as the railroad camp. That still burns me to the core, and even today. No concentration camp, we a bunch of humans too, or else we's all inhuman together.
What I can remember about Cedar Falls was that when the Everett Line train would get into town here at about 4:30 in the morning, the Enumclaw job had already gotten here. They'd come from Enumclaw, and they'd switched or made up the cars for the Everett Line. The Everett Line would then exchange Enumclaw cars. These two trains would switch in the yard. And about the same time, number 264, the Chicago freight train would come into town from Tacoma and Seattle. And I remember when number 264 came into town, that was a big deal with everybody up here. Oh, 264 is in town, was what they would say. And all activity would stop while they would devote their attention to getting 264's cars off of that train and getting their cars onto him and getting him out of town. You'd better get them on that train today, not tomorrow. That was, that was important to get everything out quickly and not delay a car for 24 hours in the yard at Cedar Falls. And it seemed to be it was not chaotic. Everybody knew what they were supposed to be doing, and everything just fit together. And everybody got all this incredible amount of work done in 2 or 3 hours. And then everybody left town. It was like the place was abandoned after 8 o'clock in the morning.
As local chairman of the union, it was my responsibility to go and not only conduct the meetings and to take care of our finances, to take care of the dues, and to start in writing all the grievances and give it to management, especially if there would be injury, because management always blamed it on the workers. and they would try to fire the workers. And when they would lay them off, then I would have to fight for to get their back wages. You know, I loved railroading because our family was railroading, and I thought my duty never to miss a day's work.
I mean, it was a company town. No stores. There was the commissary, and I remember going in there. We went in and bought candy bars. That was the only time I ever bought a candy bar, other than going down to North Bend in Lee's or Hill's grocery store. And I think on Wednesday, Parr's Meat Market from Carnation would come up here. He used to give us raw weenies.
During the Depression, there was a lot of people riding in the lumber cars and the gondolas and the empty freight cars. They're just people out of work. You know, they're just plain out of work, and that's the only means they had to ride, you know, to ride the freights. And they're usually very nice people. They weren't, you know, trashy like we have nowadays. You don't have to worry about guns and dope and all that sort of thing.